Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back. I hope that you are all doing well. This is where I talk about the books that I'm reading. I like to read diverse books and I highlight Canadian literature. If you are new, thank you so much for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. Today I am very, very excited because I am celebrating this month 5 years on BookTube. So this is the 5th anniversary today of being on BookTube, and I'm going to share my top 12 favorite books from the past 5 years. And let me tell you that I was going to try for 10 favorite books. 10 seems to be a popular number, but this was so hard. So I ended up having to do a dozen, and I'm okay with that. I can't believe that it's been 5 years. I started BookTube at the height of COVID. I had to do something to keep my mind in, good shape, and BookTube somehow found its way to me, and I am so grateful for that. So on August 3rd, 2020, I posted my first video, and here we are 5 years later. So first, I want to thank all of you who have been with me from the beginning. I have quite a few people, who have been here for the full 5 years. And to those of you who are newer, thank you so much for being part of this community. Engaging with all of you is my favorite part of BookTube. So today I'm posting my 514th video to talk about my favorite books since joining BookTube, and these are books that I read, not necessarily books that were published in the past 5 years. So there's, there could be quite a mix. In 5 years, I have read a total of 657 books. That does not include rereads or any of my work-related reading that I do. Each year I have done some type of video, to share my top reads of that year. And you would think that the easiest thing to do, because for the most part I ranked my books. So it would be easy to go, here's the top 2 books of each year, top 10 done. But as I looked at the lists, there were some books that have stayed with me in a more impactful way, books that I continue to think about, and books that I, recommend to a lot of people. Still I'm recommending those books. So all of a sudden it wasn't so easy. So I will take you through, let's say, a little bit of the process of getting the list down. And then I'm going to share with you the final 12 books that, made the favorite books from the past 5 years, that list. So first, I had to see all of the top books from each year, and that was 76 books. Now, you might wonder, why isn't it just 50 books? Well, Bookworm Adventure Girl had to make things a little more complicated, and math is not my thing. So sometimes I gave my top 10, sometimes my top fiction and nonfiction. One year I only gave 9. And in 2020, I shared my top 20 books of 2020, because there was just, lots of 20s. So I started with 76 books. Now, the first bit was easy. It was easy to just, take the top 10 of 2020 and take 1 or 2 books off if the list was over 10, or if there were multiple lists. So I did get the list down to 50 books to begin with. The next step, a little harder, but still doable. There are books on the list that I really, really enjoyed. They were lovely books, but I wouldn't put them in the top of the top. So after removing those books from the list, I had about 33. So I thought, I'm doing pretty good, because I've now got the list down to more than half. So I thought I was doing great, but it started getting more difficult. Because in 2020 was an excellent reading year for me. And I know, some people during COVID especially had a really hard time reading because it was hard for them to focus and they couldn't read. So for me, it was the opposite. I couldn't get enough books read in 2020, and I read some excellent books that year. So much so that when I looked at the 20 books that I had originally put on the list, I thought, how am I ever going to cut this down to the top 10, let alone even more? So my top 10 in 2020 are all books that I loved. I believe all 10 are on my favorites books of all time list. I continue to talk about these books, and even looking back on it now, 5 years later, I still have that reaction where, oh, I have to tell you about how amazing and incredible this book is, let me just gush about it for forever because I want you to read it. So in making the top 12 list, it really hurt to cut books like Us Against You by Fredrik Backman, one of my favorite authors. And this series, the Beartown series, is so good. It's one of the, if not the best series that I've ever read. Exceptional writing, the world building. I love the characters. I was able to let this go from the top 12 because this is the second book in the series. I did enjoy it more than book 1, which was Beartown, but you need both, really. Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. This is by Gail, Honeyman. How do I not include this book when it's a book that I have recommended to so many people? I love Eleanor, and I love how quirky she is, and I love the friendship in this book. I loved everything about this book. So how do I not include it? But it went off the list. Another exceptionally written book is 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. This book ripped my heart out. It's so good. This is a story about the strength of women and female friendship, also about survival in many ways. It's totally my thing, My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This book stayed with me forever. I still think about this book. It was such an intense read. I talked about it a lot. So good. There's The Red Chesterfield by Wayne Arthurson. This is such a gem of a book. It's only 100 pages. You can read it in one sitting. It's so clever and unique, and I adore this book, but I had to let them all go, including some others that were so great. But 3 books from 2020 remained. Then I looked at the 2021 list, which had 10 books. There were a few that were, I would say, easier, on this list to let go of. How the Penguins Saved Veronica by Hazel Pryor. I loved this book. It was so sweet. But against so many other books on the list, I knew that it wouldn't make the final cut. The same is true for Beach Read by Emily Henry. It's my favorite Emily Henry book, and I think it would probably make it in the top list for a beach or summer read list, but not for this one. And you may also be surprised, because I was surprised, that in 2021 I ranked 10 books and the top 2 didn't make my favorite books of the past 5 years. I was surprised. So 2021 was the year I read Pride and Prejudice, by Jane Austen. And I cherish that book and that experience of reading that year. It is one of my all-time faves. But for this list, I was willing to let it go. There was only one nonfiction on the 2021 list, and that was hard. It was hard to not include this in the top 12 favorite books. Not My Father's Son by Alan Cumming. This is one of the best memoirs that I've read. I thought that the way the story was told, the self-reflection, and just the way he ties everything together was brilliant. It's funny and heart-wrenching, but in the end, Alan Cumming didn't make the final list. Okay, 3 other books from 2021 did remain. So that meant I had 6 books so far, which also meant that I was over halfway if I was going to do a top 10, right, which was the original plan. And I still had 3 years to go. So in 2022, I only had a top 9. That year I gave awards to books, which was so much fun because it meant that I could talk about so many books. I ended up talking about 20 to 30 books that I read. But then from the top 9, it was another great list of great reads. And then this is another example of where my number 1 book didn't make the cut into the top 12. And that was Ragged Company by Richard Wagamese. I know, I was shocked too. Because if you watch my channel, you know that Wagamese is one of my all-time favorite authors. And I loved this book. And I loved the cast of characters. It's another powerful and really moving book from Richard Wagamese. But over time, there were, I would say, a few books on the list that I thought about more, and I traded this one for another one. So I will tell you more about that in just a little bit when we get to the final list. The Four Winds by Kristin Hannah. This was another one that, it was hard to cut. The sense of place, the setting, the pace of this book, it was all excellent. But after all of the cuts, this one went, and only 3 books from that year remained as well. So that meant that there was only 1 spot left if I were to do a top 10. In 2023, I did a top 15 fiction and top 10 nonfiction. So I knew I'm in trouble if I'm going to try and do 10. And again, there were some books from both the fiction and nonfiction lists that, I knew could be taken off. So that helps. But then I also started looking at the 2024 list, which was a top 12 list. And I started thinking that I might have to go from a 10 favorites to a 12 favorite list. And as I dwindled down the list, I realized that I could talk myself into not including any books from 2024. And I was shocked by this because there were books like The Collected Regrets of Clover by Mikki Brammer, which I think is such a wonderful read. There was also this nonfiction, Run Towards the Danger by Sarah Polley. This is a collection of essays that really made me think about things and see things differently. And it's also true that reading in 2024 was more of a struggle for me. So maybe it's not so surprising if I really think about it. But yeah, to not have any books from a whole year was kind of silly. From the fiction in 2023, I found myself cutting books like Now Is Not the Time to Panic and Nothing to See Here. These are both by Kevin Wilson. I loved these books, and Kevin Wilson became a new favorite author for me, an author that I want to keep reading, more of his work. I cut Greenwood, you guys. Greenwood by Michael Christie. I adored this book. The structure of it is genius. Everett, yeah, he still lives in my heart. This one hurt. Two of my favorite Toni Morrison books also got cut. The Bluest Eye, which I still think is one of the best debuts I've ever read, and Sula, which is my favorite Morrison book. So in the end, only one fiction book from 2023 made the list. The nonfiction was a little easier, but it was still hard to see this one, Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand. It was hard to see this go. It's such an incredible story. The other one that hurt to see go was The Only Plane in the Sky by, who's that by? Garrett M. Graff. This is an incredible book, unlike anything else I've read. The audio is the way to go with this. I listened and read. It's an oral history, so I think that maybe kind of helps. Two amazing nonfiction books from 2023 did make the list, though. And, keeping my favorite books from the past 5 years to a list of 12 ended up being doable. I continued to try and cut 2 from the list to do 10, but I couldn't do it. So let's take a look at my 12 favorite books of the past 5 years while I've been on BookTube. And as I was looking at the books, I realized that these are all books that when I see them, I just want to, give them a hug. You know what I mean? that book hug desire to just hold it close and maybe protect it from what I don't know, but just to protect them in some way. What all the 12 books have in common are that they evoke deep emotions. They are about friendships, family, having strength of character, overcoming obstacles, redemption, survival. I think all of those are common themes. And if you've been following my channel for a while, I don't think that any of that would surprise you, because I do tend to gravitate towards those kinds of books. But if you are newer, to my channel, then this is it gives you a pretty good idea of the type of books that I really, really enjoy. But just to be clear, I do like fun, happy, quirky, and humorous books too. So, okay, I'm going to start with the 2 nonfiction books that made the favorite 12 list. So, Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is Chanel Miller's memoir of her experience of not only being sexually assaulted on Stanford campus by Brock Turner, but really it's more about her experience of how she was treated afterwards. As a victim of sexual assault, she had no identity, and really what the trial was like for her. Chanel Miller's impact statement has made an incredible impact, and this book, I think, is part of that. It's a continuation of that. This book made me angry, and it made me see things in a new way. It is so well written, and I think it's a book that, I think everyone should read it. This beat out the memoirs of Sarah Polley and Alan Cumming. It's a really good book. The second nonfiction book is also a memoir, and I've mentioned it many times on my channel, and it is Call Me Indian by Fred Sassakamoose. This is another very well written book. Fred Sassakamoose was the first Indigenous player in the NHL. He was a residential school survivor, obviously an incredibly good hockey player. And this memoir shares, all of that, but it also shares his story after he left the NHL. And he left the NHL after only 12 games. So as I've said so many times before when I've talked about this book, it is excellent. Everyone should read this book as well. Okay, for the fiction, which I didn't put in it, I put it in order of author's last name. So first up is a book that I kept over books like Richard Wagamese's Ragged Company. So this is what I traded out, and it's Daughters of the Deer by Danielle Daniel. This is a book that almost no one talks about. For some reason, it has been flying under the radar, and it is an exceptionally good book. This story takes place in the 1600s in Trois-Rivières, Quebec. Marie is a healer and an Algonquin woman who she's experienced a lot of loss, and the chief believes that if she were to marry one of the white men, that somehow that could help to save their people. So Marie marries Pierre, and Pierre doesn't understand Marie. This is an understatement, but doesn't understand Marie and the ways and beliefs of her people. And Marie doesn't understand Pierre's, Catholic faith and his ways either. So they are often finding themselves at odds with one another. Marie and Pierre have a daughter named Jeanne. She is two-spirit, and she is in love with Josephine. So in Marie's tradition, two-spirited people are revered, but the law says that Jeanne must marry a man by her 18th birthday. And according to the new settlers, including her own father, Jeanne is sinful and evil. So, of course, this tension and the idea of living in these basically two different worlds for Jeanne, it's very palpable. The characters in this novel are so well developed. The mother-daughter relationship is beautiful. The language and the writing of this novel it's exquisite. I wish that this had been given, a little bit more hype, because it definitely deserves it. Okay, next is Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides. When I read this book, it was the book that had been on my TBR on Goodreads the longest, and I'm so glad I finally read it. I've also talked about this book being ahead of its time in many ways. This tells the story of 3 generations of the Stephanides family, and it's narrated by Cal, who is 3rd generation, and it explains how the choices they make, like the family has made, who they marry and decide to have children with, lead to Calliope finding out they are not female, but in fact is Cal. There is so much to this story that it's hard to describe it in a way that really does it justice. It's really a story about family. The writing is impressive, and the book gives you a lot to think about. There's a lot in this book. Oh, this next book. Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. Charlie. For this one, I do want to hug Charlie, who is the main character and narrator of the story. Charlie Gordon is in his 30s and he has mental disabilities. We don't know exactly like what he has or what is going on, but we know that he doesn't have average intelligence. What we do know is he's a sweetheart, that Charlie is pretty innocent, and he just believes that people are good, you know, and that they're well-intentioned and well-meaning. And Charlie works in a bakery. He thinks that his co-workers are his friends, you know, they're his buddies, when in reality they are laughing at him, they make fun of him, but Charlie doesn't have the capacity to realize that. And there are these scientists who are working with Charlie, and they want to do an experiment with him. They've had some success, I should say, with mice, and they hope to have similar success with Charlie. So Charlie, of course, wants nothing more than to be smart, right? He knows that he's not as smart as everyone else. And this begins the Gordon Algernon project. And Algernon is the mouse that they've been experimenting on. And after Charlie has an operation, over some time, he becomes a genius. And this book just brings up so many important questions about human integrity, human intelligence, the importance that we put on certain aspects of the human person and what being a human is about, the values we put on people. And, you know, one of the things that I thought was so well done was showing the difference between Charlie's mental capabilities and what that meant for his emotional intelligence. There are so many layers to this story. Like, you could really dissect this. There's so much to it. It could be analyzed in many, many different ways. It's really a heartbreaking book, and you can't help but love Charlie. And I feel like I felt all of Charlie's emotions, and especially, you know, as he started to understand that the world and realizing that people aren't as good as he originally thought. And then when Algernon, the mouse, begins to decline, you can't help but agonize with Charlie just a little. So this is just, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. The Book of Longings by Sue Monk Kidd. Sue Monk Kidd is one of my favorite authors. I love her books. And the concept of this book is so interesting, and I love the retelling. It's really a reimagining, I guess, of Jesus's life. And it begins with a question like, what if Jesus had a wife? Who would this wife be? And Sue Monk Kidd uses well-known gospel stories to create this lovely story about Anna. And the focus of the story is Anna, not Jesus. And it's told from her perspective. And I just think that it's brilliant. Anna is an intelligent, bold, and rebellious teenager when we first meet her. She lives in a society where women are left behind, they're ignored, they're silenced. They have rules about, you know, what they can and cannot do. And Anna pushes against a lot of these rules because she wants to be a scribe. And she does not want to be betrothed to the older man that her father has arranged for her to marry. So that becomes a thing. And strong women and female relationships is a given in all of Sue Monk Kidd's books. Maybe that's why I'm drawn to them. So not surprising, Anna is a strong woman, and she is surrounded by other strong women, and I love how that is done. You do not have to be religious or Christian to, I think, read and enjoy this book. The story can really stand on its own. If you do know the gospel stories, then you might be surprised that you actually already know Anna and Anna's brother. So I cannot say enough about how much I loved the way that Sumunk Kid wove Anna's life and Jesus's life together, while still being very respectful of scripture and teachings. So the Book of Longings, I think, is, and I've said this many times, it is to the Gospels what The Red Tent by Anita Diamant is to the Torah. I think that there's just a lot of genius in this book, and it allows women to be part of a story that they don't usually see themselves in, because it's a story that they're not really in. So yeah. Ordinary Grace by William Kent Kruger. The year I first read William Kent Kruger, I read both of his standalone novels that he had out at the time. And this is the one that has stayed with me the most, although This Tender Land, which is the other one, could also easily have made this list. This story takes place in the summer of 1961 in a small Minnesota town when Frank Dunn is 13 years old. And a young boy in the town has died, and people of the town are kind of divided in how they're thinking about things. So some believe that he was ran over by a train. Others believe that he was murdered. And my favorite part of this book was Frank's younger brother, Jake. And Jake is so endearing, and I loved the relationship of the two brothers. Like, it's so well done. They also have an older sister. And when another body is found, it just sends the town like spinning a bit. And what they don't know is that the two boys are keeping a secret. The writing is incredible. There's a strong sense of place and feeling like you know this town and the people. And all of the characters have purpose. And I love when an author does that well. This is a book that I can gush about for a while because I just thought that it was amazing. It's so good. So good. Okay, I mentioned that I had to cut 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini, and that drew blood. It really did. That one hurt. But doing that made room for this next book, which is A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mystery. This is a book that was in my top 20 of 2020. And you know what? I'm not even sure. I think this one didn't even make the top 10. I don't think. Okay, but it is a book that has stayed with me. It's huge, but I think about it often. I have recommended it to so many people. Like, even though it is, I think it's more than 800 pages. Oh yeah, it's about 800 pages. This book has just found a place to live inside me, so I had to include it. Be prepared to have all of the emotions with this one. It takes place in the 1970s in India, during the Indian emergency, which I knew hardly anything about, if anything, when I first read this. The main characters, I feel like I know them all. There's a student named Manik, Dina, who is a very resourceful widow. And then there's an uncle and nephew who they're both tailors. And all of them, like, really the story is about them trying to survive. And through their stories and the stories of, like, there's several secondary characters, we learn of the poverty, the caste system, and the corruption that existed. And in a time where, like, nobody trusted anybody. You couldn't trust anybody else. These four characters learn to lean on each other, and they develop some very unlikely friendships. And then we also learn of just that will to survive and what people will do to overcome adversity. This is a heartbreaking story. It's powerful, and the writing is spectacular. Scenes of this story still like pop into my head every once in a while. It's fantastic. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I loved this book, obviously, since it's on this list. Evelyn Hugo is a Hollywood icon, an Elizabeth Taylor, Marilyn Monroe type character. She became famous in the 1950s when she went to LA to, live a life of fame and glamour. So how the world knows her is one side of the story. And when the book starts, it's now 2017, and Evelyn has decided to have her biography written to tell the whole story, to set the record straight kind of thing. And she chooses an unknown journalist named Monique to tell her story to, in the hopes that she will then write this book. So she shares how she used her ambition to find fame. She talks about the 7 men that she married and just the legacy that she wants to leave behind. This story was written, I think, exceptionally well. I loved the characters, and I thought that the couple of twists along the way, or surprises, I guess, were, very clever. If you like old Hollywood, then, you will definitely get all of those vibes with this one. The Island of Sea Women by Lisa C. I absolutely loved this novel. I know I'm saying that about all of them, but it's because they're all, it's true, they're all so great. Okay, this is historical fiction that takes place on Jeju Island in South Korea. Again, not something I knew a whole lot about. It begins in the late 1930s, and the story follows the friendship of Mia and Young Suk. And these two girls at the beginning, they are in many ways opposite of each other. They come from different worlds. But Young Suk finds solace with Maya and the Hanyo women. And the Hanyo women are women on the island who are deep sea divers. And these women are highly respected because their work is so dangerous and very important for the community. So in this culture, the husbands of the Hanyo women are the ones who take care of the household and raise the children because their wives are out doing this dangerous work. The backdrop to the story is the World War II, Japanese colonialism, the Korean War, Hiroshima. So some scenes are very difficult to read in this as well. We follow Mia and Young Suk's friendship as, they grow up, they get married, they have children. It's so beautifully written. The story is both really endearing and heartbreaking. I learned a lot from this book, and it's one of my favorite Lisa C. books. Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart. Again, so much emotion with this one. I also want to hug Shuggie and just keep him safe. The story follows Shuggie as a young boy in Scotland from when he's age 5 to 15. And Shuggie's life really revolves around his alcoholic mother, that he believes he can help her. If he just takes better care of her, then she can get better. And Shuggie wants so badly to fit in. All of his emotions are felt with such depth as he deals with abandonment and just trying to understand the profound bond that he has with his mother. Shuggie Bain is a story of resilience and survival. It's a slow burn novel, and the writing is excellent. Again, some of these scenes are difficult to read. It's like not being able to turn away from a car accident, right? The story is intense. I felt like I was in it. And even when I think of it now, even when I think of the book now, it's like knowing you have a bruise and the bruise is healing, but you can't help but touch it to see if it's still sore. And of course it is. Yeah, that's this book. So finally, another book with all the feelings, A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This story follows 4 friends over several decades. I can't remember how many now, quite a few though. Jude is the protagonist, and we learn his story over the course of many years, over these decades. And we know at the beginning, Jude has medical concerns, and his 3 friends are his support system, basically. Even though they also don't know like the extent of Jude's condition. They don't really know his story. He's pretty quiet about all of that. And while his friends are trying to help him, we get glimpses into Jude's past, from his childhood and the many traumas that he has experienced growing up. It's a difficult and painful story that is also a slow burn. It's beautifully written. This book covers like mental illness, the effects of abuse, and coping with some unimaginable things. And I had never read a book like this before. It's another big book. It is emotionally intense. And Jude definitely has a special place in my heart. It's an excellent, excellent book. So those are my 12 favorite books from the past 5 years. It will be interesting to see how well all of these books stand up over, say even the next 5 years. I will put links below to the best of videos for all 5 years so far, so feel free to check those out and see what other books I've enjoyed. As I said, I cut a lot of really good books, so looking at these 12, I would say that I still think about all of these. I still recommend all of these to most people, to a lot of people, and as someone who is not a big rereader, I would reread all of these as well. So besides all of the great books I've read while being on BookTube, as I said in the beginning, the other great thing, and maybe even the more important thing for me, is the people that I have had the opportunity to meet and have come to know in some way. So, whether that's other BookTubers or subscribers and commenters, it has just been a pleasure to read with you and talk about books with you for the past 5 years. And I really hope that we can continue to enjoy books together for some more time together, hopefully a long time. Please let me know if you have read any of these, or if you are interested in any of them. Perhaps what books would be on, your favorites list of the past 5 years. If you know that, please share those. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.